Have you ever tried watercolouring in a different way? In today's stylish card making techniques with Jenny, I'm pairing one of my favourite watercolouring techniques, creating galaxy skies, with the colouring in of a floral image to bring a gorgeous, contrasting space theme to my floral card. Hi guys, it's Jenny. Welcome to another episode of Stylish Card Making Techniques with Jenny. Today I'm featuring this Artist's Watercolor 24 pan set along with my Artist's Watercolor brushes. I'm using the detail brush set today, and the one I'll be using is a size 3. You can use whichever size watercolor brush that you need for your project. I just like this size for getting in some of those smaller areas. I'm featuring the Simple Roses stamp set for this technique today, as well as heat embossing with antique silver embossing powder, and I'm going to be doing this all on watercolor cardstock from Altenew. So first off, I'm going to do my heat embossing. I'm laying out some of the images from the stamp set, and for this technique I really recommend using stamps that have larger open areas rather than super detailed stamps. Way when we create our sky, our space themed galaxy colouring in, you'll be able to see much more of it in those open areas. And there are plenty of stamps Altenew carries. You don't have to do this with florals. I just really like how it's an unusual and unexpected style to colour in a floral stamp with a galaxy theme. That's just an unusual style, and I really like to put contrasting type themes and styles together. You could of course do any of your stamps that you have in your stash. There's a couple of others. I was going through my collection. Vases is another good one, some good open areas, and also frames. So there's some frame stamps, geometric frame stamps that would work really well with this technique as well. So I'm heat embossing with antique silver embossing powder. I treated the cardstock with a powder tool before I stamped down with the embossing ink and heat embossed, just to make sure I didn't get any powder sticking where I don't want it. The colours I'm using from the pan set are some of the darker blues and blacks. And then for the underlying colours, I'm using purples and pinks. So this, I will warn you, is going to look like an absolute hot mess at first. But don't worry, just go with it. I promise it will work out. So I've grabbed a wet brush. It's got quite a lot of water loaded on it. I haven't added any to the paper first. And I'm picking up paint with my brush. I'm splodging it here and there. You can see I am not being very careful here whatsoever. The beauty of heat embossing is that I don't have to stay between the lines, because that heat embossing is going to resist any watercolour, and I can just splodge it around to my heart's content. I'm adding my colours first, so I'm using some pinks and some purples and that lighter blue first. And you'll see as I start bringing those colours and filling in that white, I'm going darker and darker. So I'm bringing in some of the navy and then going around the edges with that super dark blue and black. And you'll see it, the paint is a little watery. I wanted to keep that dark colour, so I haven't added too much, but I wanted enough that it would blend in and around those colours I've already added. And I do bring some of that darker colour into the middle as well, just so that it doesn't look too much like I just outlined the florals. I'm not going for any sort of shaded areas or anything like that. I really and truly just want this to be almost like a floral window out onto the night sky. So what you're seeing here is that I'm using some clear water just to add here and there some blobs of water, just to blend some more of that paint together and remove the harsh lines. And then I'm going to come in, and so I'm going to do that all over those florals, and then I'm going to come in with a thirsty brush. That's a brush that I've wiped off onto a paper towel, and it will pick up that excess liquid, and you'll see as I pull away some of that darker paint, it reveals those pinks and purples that we put underneath. I didn't get a messy blob of blue. I've still got some of that pink and purple showing through. And that way you get that sort of nebula look, but still blending into a darker night sky. Where I think I picked up a little bit too much, I'm come back in with a bit more of that navy blue and black here and there. Now I've left that to dry, and for my leaves I'm going to just add a wash of purple and then a bit of purple and blue mixed together to darken those edges. I'm just going to dry it up. I've not been too careful to stay inside the lines here because I am going to fussy cut it later. If you're planning on die cutting, I recommend staying within that outer edge. I'm then taking a wet brush, getting a lot of white paint from the palette on my brush and splattering it all over those florals. It doesn't matter if a bit goes on the leaves as well. And this adds that starry night sky look, and it also serves to make sure that any areas that didn't quite blend together are covered up. Once it's dried, I can come in with a dry cloth or paper towel and just dab off some of that watercolor paint that might be sitting on top of the embossing. And you can just wipe that off and that gorgeous silver color shows through. And I fussy cut it off screen. I didn't want that white border around the edge. And you can see this is what you're left with. These gorgeous galaxy sky type colors brought out in a floral image, plus my leaves. For my background, I don't want to detract from the star of the show, which is those galaxy petals. So I'm using a stenciled background. I'm featuring the linear stencil for this one. This is one of my favorite stencils, but it's super delicate. So you do need some sort of temporary adhesive on the back to avoid it shifting if you're going to do some ink blending, which is what I'm doing here. I've got Dark Night crisp dye ink, and I'm just going to blend that out from the center with a large ink blending tool, fading out towards the edges. And my craft mat is really helpful here, so I place the panel of white cardstock in the center. I can line up the edges of that stencil so I know I've got it centered perfectly without any measuring. I'm just going to lay down my flowers just to see where I want them to go, and by placing the entire piece in my MISTI, I can make sure that I get my sentiment exactly lined up. I haven't adhered those florals at this point, so I've got a bit of a wiggle room, but I wanted to make sure that I got my sentiment that I'm stamping directly onto the panel behind it in the right place so it wouldn't be covered up by any of the leaves. I'm stamping this sentiment, which will say "You are the best," with Obsidian Pigment Ink. And I'm just going to stamp down that main "the best" first and then come in with that secondary sentiment over the top. I'm then going to adhere down with foam tape those florals. So that first big one is going to be at the back, so I'm just using one layer of foam tape. And then for my second floral, I'm adding one layer on the back, and then I'm going to have that piece hanging off the edge. I want to double that up so that there's an extra step up of dimension. And I'm just going to place that over the top of that first floral. For the leaves, I'm just going to add one small strip of foam tape and tuck them in behind the flowers I've already got there. Of course, it's one of my cards, I have to add some splatters. I'm using antique silver just to match the embossing that we did already. This is the antique silver metallic ink spray. And I don't want to ruin this with too many big blobs, so I'm coming back with a paintbrush. I find that this gives me much better control over the size of the drops. You could also tap it onto an acrylic block if you wanted even more control, and flick it off the edge of that. And then to finish, I'm adding some matte silver sequins here and there, just to keep it simple and tie in with that antique silver look. And what do you think? It's a very different way of watercoloring a floral, I'll grant you that, but I just love the way it looks. And this will also work with open sentiments, so you can colour those in. It just gives this little pop of something a bit different, and I love the way it shimmers and shines, the contrast of that dark watercolour paint against the silver embossing powder, don't you think? I hope you've enjoyed this. Please be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you have, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.
Hello crafters, Jen here. For more tips, techniques, tutorials, and to discover which paper crafting products are right for you, subscribe to Altenew's YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Thanks for watching.